Here we go. Good morning.
Good morning.
Judy just had her first taste of the technology stress that Patrick and I have felt in our time.
Yeah, not cool.
I know.
Not for you. I mean, it
We're
was
good.
just...
Built a new PC and had to update some drivers. Patrick and I tested last night. Then I got the Win22H update. No one knows what that is. Hold on. Got to focus the camera. We're going to get going.
We good?
We're good.
All
okay.
right.
Let me get the background music
focus.
going. Yeah. Bear with me. Then we have some important announcements to make. Then we're going to do like we always do. We'll just start our intro over for the podcast. All right, baby, you want to do chill music or lo-fi?
Lo-fi is fine. Whatever you want to do. Maybe turn down just a scotch.
It is good. I could turn it down on your cans if you want. Cans is an official term for all you. It's not what you think it is, Emily. Yuck. Nope, we're all set. Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
Happy Saturday. Welcome to Sober Mind. A couple important announcements I want to make. Patrick is now one of the permanent co-hosts.
Yay.
So we got last week's dynamic was so good, and I got a ton of feedback. I got a ton of feedback from some friends in Omaha, especially from the podcast that folks downloaded. I don't know if Patrick will be pleased by this or not, but they're like, that kid you had on, Patrick, was amazing. Like, he's a full-grown adult.
That might be
pleased with the kid part. The kid part I'll take, right?
Yeah. All right, let's jump into it. What we're going to do today... Oh, Patrick, did you have anything you wanted to discuss?
Nope. Thank you for bringing me along for the ride. So buckle up and here we go.
Yes. So we'll do this every Saturday, like we said. If Patrick can't make it for some reason, we'll continue to push on. But
Did you start the podcast?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Judy.
Just checking.
We have a friend of ours, James, in Omaha, crafted a bumper. It's a music track for the beginning of our podcast and the end. Patrick, I'm going to show it to you later. It is phenomenal. Amazing. So we'll get that going. What we want to do today is talk about Judy. Also, Ed gave us a friendly reminder last time. I got a timer going. In about 25 minutes, we're going to stop and we're going to look at chats and see if we can answer those so that we got
good idea.
a cohesive break during the middle of it. So,
Good idea.
what we're going to do for this format with Patrick joining is, no pressure. We just like to be ourselves. He's got a slew of questions, the same ones that I do. I think it's going to end up just turning into a different organic conversation. I like how we always roll with it here. So, Judy.
Yes.
What is your history with addiction? Take it from the top.
I guess like most people who suffer from addiction, it comes from their parents, which comes from their parents, which comes from their parents. So my parents were adult children of alcoholics, and my father struggled with alcoholism for a while, so it kind of bled down to me. But my addiction started not with alcohol, but with marijuana, which was
the devil's lettuce,
which was around us as children in the 70s. It was around, when we were little. And I think I started consuming by myself, not contact type, just being in the room, but by myself when I was like 10. So it started fairly young. And then, of course, that addictive personality bled into alcohol, which bled into cocaine, which bled into crank, which bled into, I tried acid 3 times, and that's not a big deal, but so, it led into all the other ones.
For the record, Judy said acid is not a big deal. I beg to differ.
Well, I only did it 3 times, so it's not like I was an addict or anything. Although I did laugh my ass off all 3 times, but that, that aside, that's where my history with addiction started, was with marijuana, and then, progressed from there. But like I said, I had alcohol around me all the time too.
Okay. I feel like me jumping out of the gate and asking you a question really put you on the spot. Let's take a deep breath.
I'm okay.
Okay.
I'm good.
Patrick, thoughts. Okay. I don't have any issues with marijuana. I think there's a lot of benefits to it. However, I think starting at 10 years old can definitely hinder some developmental opportunities for the old gray matter.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I went, when I was 9 years old in the 4th grade, I went from being a mentally gifted minor in the advanced programs to almost flunking out of the 4th grade. So, I mean, there was a move in there, and my parents, their divorce and separation from my father was also in there, but there was also the element of alcohol and marijuana.
4th grade.
4th grade.
In the back of the class with a bong.
No, but I did actually smoke pot in the back of a class. It was a study hall. Yes, I was. Of course, that was in high school, but no, that was still in grade school.
Patrick, 10 years old. Thoughts?
Do you remember what the draw or what appealed to you when you first started on your own? Like, do you remember how it made you feel?
Well, it numbed a lot. I was remember, like you said in our last interview, you said that it, a lot of that just muted a lot of the emotion that was there. Well, I was suffering a lot from the divorce of my parents. When they divorced, I was 5. And I was very close at the time. I was very close to my dad. And every weekend when, we'd go and visit my dad for the weekend, and then we'd go back with my mom. Whenever my mom would come and pick us up, she'd literally have to peel me off of my father. So there was a lot of that. And then plus all the numerous boyfriends that my mom had at the time. It was, there was no stability in my young life at that point. I mean, I wasn't, abused per se, but physically, but there was no stability there, and there was no, I don't know, it was not comfortable. And so when I smoked pot, it muted all of that, and I felt good, and I felt happy, and there was nothing, I had no cares, and that's what drew me. Plus the fact that my older sister was doing it, and I pretty much wanted to do everything that she wanted to do. So
Michelle.
Such a bad influence. And my mom was not shy about her partaking in it, and so it was prevalent right in front of us all the time. So it wasn't, they didn't go in the back room and smoke. It was right there all the time. So
just out in the open, like
yes.
That was the baseline for everybody.
Yeah, very much. So, it's at that age, all I wanted to do was mute all the hurt that was going on, which, I think for a lot of addicts, that's what happens. They just want to mute whatever pain that they're going through at the time.
How did your dad feel about that? I mean, you mentioned in the context of being around your mom and being it prevalent, but was it any different, or was the behavior any different?
I don't think my dad partook very much at that time, and if he did, he was more reserved with it. It wasn't very much prevalent in front of us, as far as I can remember. Yeah. I don't think he really understood or knew what was going on. I don't think he realized that we were, around it all the time. And at that time, we didn't have a lot of parental supervision. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love my mother, but she raised us with the tools that she had at the time. And coming from she was an adult children of an alcoholic, her tools were not in the best shape, so to say.
Yeah, I think a common denominator that you and I at least have, and I know other adults with developmental issues, is that
What?
Hold on. Patrick, I thought I texted you to ask to move your mic just a little bit closer, and I texted that to Emily. She's like, I don't have a microphone. There we go. Much better.
All right.
There we go. Common denominator that I see with this particular, for lack of a better term, developmental issue is around that age, and it's that father figure popping in and popping out.
Yes.
Popping in and popping out. Especially for me, I've talked about that in my abuse issue before. Abuse episode. Was that I don't think our parents at that time, we're not casting blame. Oh, hold on, let me back up. I totally blame my mother. But man, at that age, especially for a young boy, I'm sure it's the same way for girls. We need some kind of stability and parental figures in our lives. I was having a discussion yesterday with Emily. She was wanting to express her, question or concern about how her and Sarah are raising their boys, and if they're going to grow up to have toxic masculinity, or if they're going to be struggling with showing emotion and all that. And I think I texted it in a very aloof way, but like we talked about before, all things being equal, if you have two loving parents and a community of parents and just a diverse mix of folks all around, then you're going to be really set up for success.
Yeah.
So that's it. It doesn't take much for us seedlings. Just a little bit of care and feeding and attention and not neglect, and I think we're set up for a lot of success.
I agree. At that age, definitely. You look. I think some of my most full impacts from my relationship with my parents, especially with my dad, was around that time. I have the most vivid memories of him. One morning I tried to wake him up so we could play on the weekend because he was traveling all the time, and he just got so violently upset that he just up and put his fist through the drywall a couple times. And for a 5-year-old to see that,
Traumatic.
is just he was Zeus himself to me, right? He is for a kid, not quite God, but that's like a real manifestation, the authority of your dad, and likewise, for the emotional intelligence, if you see your peers, if you see your people that you look up to, that you look for that help, like, hey, I'm having trouble with these emotions, or I don't know how to handle them. And they're sitting there going like, well, fuck, I don't know how to handle them either.
Yeah.
Here's a rip,
Yeah, exactly.
So-
Once again, my mother, I think, was in the same boat. I mean, I was struggling as a child, and she struggled as a child, and she hadn't gone through her journey yet. So she was still in the child mode herself, even though she was a grown adult. So yeah, I completely agree. And I think I think that because my parents were not together, but they were in the same area when I was younger until I was 9, and my mom moved us up to Oregon from California. I was still in a fairly good environment. Even though my parents weren't together, I still had both of them around. But once my mom took us up to Oregon, that was it. That was it. I was, downhill
what happened
all the way.
afterwards? What happened from there on?
We moved up to Oregon because my mom was following a boyfriend, and 3 months after we were there in Oregon, he kicked her out with both of us. So we were just my mom, my sister, and me, and a car, and that was it. So we moved into an apartment and stayed in Oregon until I was 14, from 9 to 14. I mean, at any time, we could have moved, as far as I know, we could have moved back down to California. She still had friends down there. We had nobody up in Oregon, but for some reason, we stayed. So, and I only saw my dad in the summer. I never saw him during the rest of the year.
Did you vocalize any of that to your mom? Like, what I'm trying to ask is, like, do you think she actively tried to keep you from your dad?
I don't think so. I think what her goal was that she was still looking for love for herself. Mm-hmm. And so she was chasing after that. And that's why she was following, a boyfriend up to Oregon. She was still looking for that love because she hadn't turned it around on herself yet. She hadn't realized how to love herself and feel comfortable in her own skin. So she was constantly chasing it externally.
When did alcohol enter into the equation?
Into my equation or her equation?
Well, yes. But let's start with you first.
Into mine, oh gosh, it started when I was young too, probably 12, 13, somewhere in there. When I was 12 years old, my friends, quote unquote, decided that they wanted to skip school and get some vodka and a bottle of squirt and go to my house and drink the whole thing. And, one threw up on the porch, one threw up next to my sister's bed, and I made it to the bathroom. Not the toilet, but the bathroom. And then completely forgot that the bottle was sitting in the living room, and we all took off. And my mom came home and found the bottle of the fifth of vodka sitting in the living room. And that's probably when I remember that I was, that I had gotten drunk for the first time. I think I was 12. So yeah, young.
All right, let's shift gears a little bit. Babe, are you okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm good.
Relax.
I'm fine.
Listen to the lo-fi beats.
I'm fine.
I know I haven't, just in the spirit of the Sober Mind podcast, I haven't felt this sort of upheaval of energy from you in here.
Well, it's kind of like a verbal vomiting, so to speak. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that happened in my life that I'm, well, one, not proud of, and two, very uncomfortable with.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, let's fast forward a little bit. Safe space.
You keep backing away from me like I'm gonna attack you.
Anyone who joins the Sober Mind is in a safe space. But I think I got a little uncomfortable, but this is our spot. So, all right. I think to answer, can I put words into your mouth?
You can try.
I think to answer Patrick's question of when alcohol really entered your life, I want to say it was probably in your 20s. It really started to become an issue when you and I got together. I don't think there was a
I think it was before that, before you and I got together. I agree with you. It was probably in my 20s where I was constantly drinking a lot, but I was in my first marriage, I was consumed a lot of alcohol because he was an alcoholic as well.
Monty. What kind of name is that? I take it back. If anyone's named Monty out there, I apologize.
Yeah, so
edit that out.
That was, I mean, there was a lot of drunken escapades there too. So.
I did not know that.
Yeah. Well, it's not something I talk about. I mean, Do
you want to give an example of the escapade?
Gosh, we got drunk one time and went swimming in an aqueduct and got arrested for trespassing. That was one of them. There was a lot of times when And okay, so where we were in Michigan, there was a lot of dirt roads, so you could just go what they call road drinking. So we would go get in the car and hit a dirt road, and you're only going 5 miles an hour, but you know, you're pounding beers, and everybody in the car is pounding beers, including the driver. So we would do that a lot. And a few times not remembering how we actually got home. So yeah, there was a few.
Yeah.
I remember a couple times that my husband at the time would get drunk and be flirting with another woman in front of me. That was fun.
That had to be hurtful.
Yeah. But, you know, I was drinking at the same time too, so.
When you and I got together, I started drinking. Wait, take this in the spirit for which it's intended. I was coming out of the military, really readjusting to society, if you will, and then jumping right into a relationship after I had been alone and celibate for 3 years, which was good. There's a lot of John finding himself time, which was, I thought, one of the healthier things I could do. But it was a lot for me to digest with our relationship. I don't know if I think at the time I started drinking probably a little bit heavier than I should have, nowhere near like the last couple of years. But do you feel like I ever contributed to your delinquency? Do you think that me drinking a lot had you sort of jumping in and drinking a lot too?
I don't think so. I think we commiserated together. I think it was a joint venture. I think that, I mean, because, you know, it was just between you and me. I think it was just one encouraging the other. It was just kind of a joint thing. Yeah.
The codependency of that is always very comfortable, because you can't tell me not to do it if you're doing it too.
Exactly.
I think that as we started to drink more and more in our relationship, because it did start to blossom quite a bit. I can recall sort of stair steps of it growing to the point to where we were consuming a lot of alcohol.
Well, when you were living with Becky and Skip at the time, hi guys, whenever I would go and visit, the first thing we would do is go out and get a case of beer.
Yeah, it almost became ritualistic.
Yeah. We tried to be healthy and run and then drink beer. But eventually it was just every time we saw each other, we'd go and get some beer and drink.
Yeah.
That's it.
So where I'm going with that, to make a long story super short, is I think that in the beginning, we cultivated our marital relationship probably in an unhealthy way. And you and I used to get drunk and have arguments.
Oh, stupid arguments.
So dumb.
Stupid. So dumb.
Just out of pure stubbornness and selfishness. And I can't even, I was on my run this morning and I was trying to think of an example. I cannot think of an example. I can think of how I felt sometimes, even 6-7 years ago. You and I would get tipsy or drunk and then get into, I don't even know, just some kind of weird bullshit argument about something and neither one of us would concede.
No.
Heads up, because you're super stubborn.
Shocker.
And then I remember me going to sleep in the guest room and not sleeping and waking up, and it was thunder and lightning was going down. It was in the springtime. It was just a really dark, dismal feeling. And you know what? Completely avoidable.
Yes.
That's...
If we were in our rational mind, we would never have those arguments.
Yeah. When you and I were sober for a couple months, that's one of the things that we discussed, was that how much more intimate our relationship started to become. Mentally intimately, if that makes sense.
And emotionally too.
Yeah. There was there's just sort of a rekindling of the relationship. It feels good.
It does. It feels much better. I feel closer to you now being sober than I did when we were drinking.
Yeah. So Patrick, that's what I gave you a heads up about yesterday. I want to maybe dig into that, and that I started to feel, really reflecting back a couple years ago, when I just felt like our relationship was starting to slough off, if that makes any sense at all. I think there was a fear of us not working something out, but then there was, I think, the delusion of, well, we're just going to grow old together and always be drinking and drunk, and then I think it'll just sort of figure itself out.
Yeah. And I would always be high.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the vision I always had, was, you know, if I got to the retirement point and I was going to be super unhealthy, and
That you were going to die before me. I remember you telling me that.
yeah, but
Like, oh, how cheerful.
I don't know. It's tough to articulate. I don't know what would have become of our relationship. I think it was, I hate to say it, we've been married for 20 plus years, been together for 22-ish. And we have a really strong bond and a connection, but the alcohol was really starting to sort of wedge it.
Oh, most definitely.
But we
Yeah.
never talked about it.
Nope. Fear.
Could I ask some questions around that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I could better understand. I mean, obviously, you know, modeling relationships, it wasn't in the cards for it to end well, right? You know, given past history and substance abuse, you know, what I'm asking is, there's obviously something between you that, you know, you're a very loving couple and you're in a healthy relationship, but there's a tie that binds, that feels you compelled. You know, in fact, you've spoken to how that's been your strength during your journey in sobriety, you know, whereas others would seek, you know, like myself, either coaching or therapy or other pieces. Obviously, there's tiny pieces, but the core of your guys' has been each other. You know, what is it about each other for you, despite your history, that keeps you drawn? You know, what is the tie that binds?
I think for me is because he always makes me laugh. and I don't know, it's not always, you know, happy-go-lucky between us, but for the most part, we complement each other, I think, pretty well. I'm a little more, I don't know. I want to say even keel, but that's not quite right.
Dang, Patrick, you put her on the spot with that one. Baby, what is the tie that binds? Making you laugh. I appreciate that, but that is, I'm sitting here trying to think
I know
about it.
it's kind of superficial, but for me, it's important. It's laughter and joy is important, I think, in any relationship, and I think that's a very strong bond that I have with you. Is that, you know, we have those times of laughter and joy, and that's very important to me, and I'm very grateful for it.
Me too. Patrick, I got to think about that one a bit more, because it's tough to put an adjective on it for me. But a good example was, I was in Omaha for this past week, and it was wildly stressful. Just a ton of dramatic stuff going on, and there was times when I just wanted to. I would call Judy, I'd FaceTime her, and just say, "Man, I wish I was there just to get a hug."
Well, same way. I mean, there was stress going on in Omaha, and there was stress going on here at the same time. And the only thing I really wanted was just for him to be here, to be next to me. But that's all I can come up with at the moment.
It doesn't have to be anything more than that, you know, like providing that safe space for one another when it hasn't been achieved anywhere else is, you know, drastically important. I just find your guys' stories interesting because, you know, reflecting back on some of the ones that you've shared, no matter how dark the situation is, you two have an innate ability to choose each other, you know, And I think that's something very special, you know, not to be a mind trip here, but, you know, reflecting back on the beginning of your sobriety journey, you know, that could have gone very differently if one of you chose to stick with it and one of you not. Right.
I don't think I could have quit if I didn't have him if we didn't do it together. I don't think I would have. I wanted to in my head, but I don't think I would have had a strong enough character to do it without doing it jointly with him. I may have, but I don't think I would have.
We talked about that a couple weeks ago, Patrick, with her. I can't do it.
Yeah.
There's no way I could. I'm so in my head about stuff like that, and that's why the conversation with you when we were running was so fascinating. And I told you, I'm like, man, I just couldn't do it.
Yeah, kudos to your strength, man. That's pretty awesome.
We have all strength in different facets, you know. That's the struggle of life, is just finding our own way to, you know, step into our own shoes on those strengths, right? For you two, the fact that you can provide that space for each other is just, while going through it together, is just so amazing to me, you know. And like I said, the innate ability for you guys to choose each other, even in some of the darkest times, despite the history, you know, of what your past histories, what arc that may have normally led to, right? So, you know, kudos to you guys. You know, that's another type of strength too. You know, I mean, the fact that you, just waking up one day, and I mean, the way you tell it, it almost seems overnight, the going on that sober journey. But I know it's a long road leading up to it. But, you know, that was a drastic change, and that is unnerving enough for one person to undergo something like that, and let alone two people to go together. But often there is so much tumult and change of everything that is new that, you know, I've seen that happen before in relationships when other things, and, you know, sometimes they drift apart or whatever. But again, a testament to you two. It seems to, like, Judy, you just said it. You're like, that it has made you two more intimate with each other, more emotionally connected.
Yeah.
You know, that is a wonderful gift, you know, that, you know, you guys can invest each other and it returns dividends like it does.
Yeah, if anybody out there is going through that with their partner and thinking about getting sober, if you've both got the issue, it takes a collaborative effort for sure to figure out a path. But very selfishly, Patrick, I've told you this before, and that I think the timing was really right for Judy and I too. One, we've just had it. Our bodies and our minds were like, that's it. We're both done.
I could literally feel my liver. That's not a good sign.
And spiritually, it was starting to hamper us too. So I'm glad that we both had the wherewithal, if you will, to say, all right, let's fix ourselves. Let's fix our relationship to make sure that we're giving each other what we need, and that so what's broken? What's the linchpin?
The underlying cause, yeah.
Alcohol.
I think plus when we both decided to go sober, we quit alcohol, but I was still smoking pot. I didn't quit smoking pot until 2 weeks later, because I felt like, okay, well, I'm not really quitting. I'm not really becoming sober, because I was still indulging. So yeah, that had
to been a hard conversation, because that had been in your life more. And it probably sounds like it was, like I said, it was more of a baseline. Like,
yes,
I'd assume alcohol had its ebbs and its flows, but marijuana was there, right?
It was a constant.
Yeah, I know that relationship.
It was harder
well.
to quit smoking pot for me than it was to quit drinking. Even though it was hard to quit drinking, it was harder to quit smoking pot.
How did you broach that conversation with John about, like, the disconnect between the sobriety of the booze and then, you know?
I think I just after 2 weeks, I was like, you know, I'm just going to quit smoking pot, I don't feel like I'm contributing to this sober journey 100%. So that's what I did.
Did you ever approach?
Go ahead.
Did you ever approach her about the marijuana?
No, but it was getting close. So 2 weeks in, I was starting to feel good. We were sleeping a lot better. I was like, man, I think we're really gonna be able to do this. But then I witnessed that going on too, and it wasn't a courage thing. I think it was a respect and a space thing. Like I can't. It was more than a year and a half ago. Congratulations to us. But there was a time when I was sitting there thinking, like, man, this is some bullshit. Because I wanted her to be on that full spiritual and soul cleansing journey with me, and there was just, I think that the quitting of the alcohol was, it was that static presence, and she was medicating the other way, because it would, as soon as she would ingest, it was like,
yeah.
And
it's sobriety, dealing with one devil at a time. People think it's like, oh, I'm going to go sober. In reality, for me, like, I got very angry after a spell because went sober and thought that was going to be it. Just stay sober and it's fine. But, for me, food in some respects became a coping mechanism. I'm not trying to equate it, but like it became something that, like, when I couldn't deal with certain things, I like turned to, and I gained a fair amount of weight during that. And now I was like frustrated because it's like, well, when you go sober, you're supposed to be like, automatically healthy and losing weight. And you just go out there on your press tour to say like, it's all rainbows and sunshine. And when reality, it's like, well, I'm just trading one vice for another at this point. And I would get angry at myself for that. And you have to,
it's that addictive personality. You trade one for the other. You got to feed the little dopamine receptors in your head that are, that are screaming for food, any of any kind,
right.
Alcohol, drugs, whatever. I remember when I was younger, and I was at the time I was doing a lot of crank. It was called crank. It's called meth now, but when I was doing it, it was called crank. And I would have those episodes to where I was constantly looking for it. I needed to feed that little dopamine receptor in there that just, whenever I did it, I was on cloud 9. I remember those times, and I'm so glad I got off of that quickly.
Yeah, methamphetamine's a journey on its own. Maybe one day we could have a guest on that wants to talk about that, because it's what I witnessed my mom doing, jumping between that and coke and booze. And we've talked enough about my mother. It's a whole other segment. So
yeah, that's a bad one. That's a bad one. That's hard to get off of.
Patrick, this is I will ponder this a lot more throughout the weekend, and probably Judy and I will have a discussion, but we have talked, and we look at each other sometimes, and it's like, man, it is so nice to be sober. Thank you for being a part of this journey with me. Thank you for, waking up not hungover and
truly,
and being here for me. Do you want to talk about your episode the other day?
Oh my gosh.
Patrick likes hearing about these sometimes.
So we've been sober for almost, a year and a half.
More than a year and a half.
More than a year and a half. And I never really had those really strong cravings until he was in Omaha, and I was having stress issues here. And I went down into my dad's area, and he had a couple bottles of wine there, and it took Herculean effort to turn around and walk back upstairs and not reach down and grab one of those bottles and crack it open and down the whole thing. I had never had that type of craving the whole time in my sobriety until I got to that point. But I don't think I had those stressors either that were just compounding everything. I knew that he was having a hard time in Omaha. I was having a hard time here, and it was just, I was just maxed out, and I walked down and I saw that bottle, and holy crow, it was hard. It was super hard. I called my sister, who's been sober for 5 years. No, probably more than 5. But, so I called her and I said, I'm being tested today. My sobriety is truly being tested today. My anxiety was through the roof. And I was miserable. I reached out, which was the best thing that I could have done. I reached out to somebody, and it just happened to be my sister. And at that time, there was an Al-Anon Zoom meeting that was going on right at the time I called her. And she said, well, just log on to this Zoom meeting. And there's, I don't know, 30 or 40 women from all over the world that were having this Zoom Al-Anon meeting. And it just happened to be right at that time where I was really struggling. There it was. And that was pretty phenomenal. But the struggle was super real. I really had a hard time.
That's self-confirmation bias, or we make we make our own destinies, whatever you want to call it. I'm so proud of you to see that, you called your sister in that time. And then, instead of letting the mind spill out and go down, well, what if I did drink the wine, or what if I did do that? The other answer was like, well, look, there's Al-Anon and other resources to pull to, and you were gravitated towards those. But it gets scary sometimes when the ruts in your mind, those connections, that habitual behavior runs so deep.
Yeah.
No matter how much work you do, there's corners buried in your mind that there's a saying in AA that is like, I may be further on the path down the road of the sobriety, but I'm the same distance away from the ditch as you.
Yeah, most definitely.
Right.
Most definitely. I think one of the things that helped me through that little episode was that I thought, okay, well, what am I gonna feel like if I do drink? Well, I'm gonna feel self-loathing. I'm gonna feel horrible, guilty, and then of course I'm gonna have a hangover. So all of those popped in as well, and I was like, I don't want to feel any of that at all. So that was awesome. Another thing that helped.
I call it playing the tape forward. Smart
Yes.
recovery. That's a big cornerstone. That takes a lot of awareness, because for me, most likely undiagnosed ADHD, I'm not going to go, I don't want to take away from anybody that has a diagnosis, but I identify a lot with that. And a lot of it is, at the core of it, I have very impulsive tendencies. I think emotionally in the emotional center of my brain. And it is just so hard to bring awareness to those, toolkits, because that is the moment that I'm living in when they hit. Like, that is my reality. Like, I am just so angry right now. I need to do X or whatever, or they're so overwhelming. How I learned in my family is like, dude, you're out of control. I don't have my stuff together either, so I can't deal with it. So just don't, just repress. Yeah, just stick it in your little jar. Just stuff it way down in there. Just stuff it way down, and then you can deal with it on your own terms. It's just giving space to that is, I'm so proud of you, because I know how intense that feels. Like, it feels so otherworldly at times.
Yes. I was like, well, I could easily just get in my car and go drive to the store, or I could easily get in my car and go drive to the dispensary. It was that easy, and I just had to keep repeating to myself, well, what am I going to feel like if I do? And all that guilt and shame and self-loathing, I was like, oh no, no. Didn't stop me from wanting it though. It just put a little bit of reality on it, a little bit of a spin of, okay, well, you've worked so hard to get here. Why would you do that? But it still didn't stop the craving until a little bit later.
How did you pass the feeling? Like a kidney stone or something. How did you pass?
Well, my wonderful husband, after I talked to him, recommended that I go and I meditate, which is another tool in our toolbox to use that really helps as well. As well as calling and reaching out to talk to somebody or getting on the Zoom meeting. I also did 20-minute meditation. And that was another thing that helped to kind of bring me back to focus and bring me back to the present and bring everything back into alignment, so to speak. And that helped tremendously.
Yeah.
So that was what I did. Reached out. I logged on to the Al-Anon Zoom meeting, and I meditated. And I was able to cope the rest of that day with that underlining support and effort. And then the next day it was much better.
I think that's one of my favorite tools in my toolkit. I often forget it, but I often try to go back to it. But is a return to breath. This is where we are at right now. Sometimes it is uncomfortable, but invigorating the body and just being able to feel that and know where you're at, it helps. It's the anchor.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's the anchor.
Let's take a quick pause for chats, and then Patrick, I have a confession, so you have to remind me. Thank you for all the subscribers, by the way. This is amazing.
Yes, thank you. Awesome.
There's no chat questions, simply comments from Michelle. Michelle loves her sister.
Oh, I love you too.
Okay, that's it. We'll continue to monitor the chats. Okay, confession. Since we're talking about raw emotions on Sober Mind, I wasn't super concerned when I was in Omaha. She was very stressed out. Our little dog Penny was in the vet. Oh my God, the amount of money we had to spend on that thing. She hasn't even said thank you. Anyway, she has gallstones. She's gonna survive, but just a lot of stuff going on. I think she was feeding off all the stress that I had, and it was sort of exacerbating everything. We weren't really showing it. I handled everything like a champ. I'm proud of myself. I reacted with new emotions to a lot of the stuff that I had going on.
You did very well.
Thank you.
Yeah, you did very well.
A lot of things I couldn't control, so whatever. But never once did I think about, man, a drink sure would make all of this feel better. I think I'm blessed with something else, Patrick, that when I get stressed out and start to feel anxious or whatever, I end up just really enjoying laying down and calming my mind and relaxing. I don't know how in the heck.
Even when we were drinking, if you were in a bad mood or you weren't feeling good or you were anxious about something, you wouldn't turn to alcohol.
Yeah. Alcohol was never the soother for me. It was an exciter. So the confession is that when I came home, her and I were talking, and she was super adamant about her craving that she had, and it scared me. I told her, I'm like, that scares the shit out of me, that I can't possibly imagine. I reacted with an old emotion on that, because I was telling her, like, I was getting kind of defensive and accusatory.
Judgmental.
And she's like, I'm just telling you how I feel. And I was like, I know, but it scares me. It scares me that you could have a moment of weakness. It scares me that everything that we've worked so hard for could be thrown away.
Oh, yeah, but...
I think there's something else there. Is there any other reason that might have scared you?
That's a good question, Patrick.
Then we wouldn't... Man, I was about to shed a tear right there. I think if that happened...
Oh, we'll get there.
Yeah. I think if that happened, then our...
That really would have put a crimp in our relationship. That would have been detrimental, I think.
If she went down that loss or that path, would you feel a loss?
I would.
Definitely. A loss of numerous things, not just one.
I would feel abandonment.
I think that might stem from an old feeling.
It does.
Yeah. One of the oldest ones.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, we have a
Fear.
our
Fear.
strong lock of our relationship. I don't want to discuss this anymore.
You're good.
I'm just kidding.
In due time, whenever you're ready.
Yeah.
That would have been detrimental. I mean, I think because we went on this journey together, that for one of us to fall off, I think would not, it just wouldn't be a good thing.
You know what? If Michelle was here and we asked her, Michelle, I'm going to ask you right now, what if Guy came home drunk right now? How would you react?
My God. That would be horrible.
Yeah.
And he's been sober for 9 years.
Yeah. That's good. Such good questions, Patrick. These are things I want to continue to ponder. Like, the abandonment. That's it. Wild amount of passion about that when you and I were sitting there talking. Air Force Kitty, calming down the mind is always important. Yes.
Most definitely. I started meditating before we actually got sober. And it helped with my anxiety, even though I was using marijuana to help with my anxiety. I was also meditating, and that helped with my anxiety as well. It helps to bring you, it helps to bring you focus. It helps to bring you back to the present, to back to, where you're at right now. I highly recommend it to anybody.
Babe.
Yes.
What was your rock bottom?
Oh, man. Well, like I said, I could feel my liver. That was pretty eye-opening. I think, well, I didn't wake up in the mornings crying gently in my pillow like you did, but waking up in the morning and going out to get coffee and having the shakes before you've even had caffeine. That was when I started to pay attention to what was going on. Thought, okay, I have a problem. I have a serious problem. I never thought, I'll never get to that point. I'll never, get to the DTs or anything like that. And sure enough, bam, all of a sudden I've got him. And now what do I do with it? So I think that was probably, and that was shortly before you and I decided to get sober. I would wake up in the morning feeling like crap. And the only way to not feel like crap is to go get a beer or go have a michelada or whatever, some form of alcohol, and then smoke some pot, because that, of course, gonna have alcohol, might as well have a bong hit or something.
There were times when Judy was a little bit stronger than I, and we had pretty bad hangovers a few years ago, and she wouldn't drink. She would take breaks on a day, and I didn't like that. I guess it's a codependent feeling too that we have. I would sit there and drink, and I would a couple times be like, "Aren't you gonna have a beer? Aren't you gonna have a beer? Do you want a beer?" Very, very inconsiderate shit to do. But it's because I didn't want to be alone. It's like there's well, man, is she better than me? It's just a whirlwind of bullshit, childish emotions that happen to you.
No, it wasn't. I wasn't better than you. I was still high.
Oh.
So, I mean, there was still some kind of, influence going on, whether it's alcohol or pot. I was still under the influence.
So you don't have a distinct rock bottom. I think it's important.
I don't think so. I just knew that things needed to change.
Yeah, I think it's important for listeners out there to know that you don't have to have a distinct rock bottom. If you feel like you need to quit, then that's maybe your bottom. I made up something the other day, Patrick, on my run. I was like, if someone asks me what my rock bottom is, I'll say, I don't know exactly what it was, but I crawled along the rock bottom for a long time trying to get out.
That's a good analogy. Yeah.
It is, because
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say it may not be that one event, like we say, it's when you stop digging, or maybe you're there for a long time.
Yeah.
And to Judy, to your point, I felt similar. Like I wouldn't consider a lot, like a one event or a rock bottom, but it was almost as if everything good in my life, the taste turned to ash. Like there was nothing good left.
Yeah.
And there was only the bottom. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Like even the stuff that I should
understand.
feel good and excited about, it was gone. It wasn't there. I wasn't, it muted everything to the point where it was just like, this is it. This is, hello darkness, my old friend.
Yes. You don't live, you exist.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Man.
that was probably my rock bottom, was just that feeling of I'm just existing now. And the only way I can keep existing is to keep drinking and keep smoking pot. That's the only way I can exist. I can't exist anywhere, any other way.
Yeah. I got angry at that. Like I was some modern zombie, just pumped full of caffeine and booze just to like roam the earth in this purgatory.
Yeah, Patrick, I was listening to your the link that you sent me. I don't want to say what it is because I don't know if you're ever comfortable with sharing it in the future, but I noticed something about you that is very similar to me, and that is I get the sense that your sobriety spawned the kick-ass mental health journey, because just like me, you didn't really realize you were suppressing stuff until your brain was like, oh man, it's time to open up. I can think clearly now. The rain is gone. There's a song out there.
With the ADHD tendencies, you know me, I speak in fragmented stuff. I have 6 different conversations going in on my head at once, but being impulsive and emotional thinking, that originates verbally for me first. So I enter in a conversation and I have to just drop my crap all over the table. And I've said this before, and it's disconcerting to some people, but I learned early, it's like somebody coming into your room and just dumping out their bag and just being like, well, I just need to find this. And you're like, what are you doing? This is my room. This is my space, right? And I learned, but that was part of my strength because I can ideate very quickly. I run through permutations of possibilities and stuff. I love tearing stuff apart, and I need to just spatially like reorganize stuff, right? That's one of my strengths. That's what I love about, my analytic mind. But at the same time, for somebody who's not used to that, they're just like, oh my God, what are you doing? What is all this crap? And when you're kids, people would, react adversely, be like, take that shit somewhere else, or, like go deal with that, or like, what are you doing? That is so stupid. That is the dumbest thing ever. And I learned to I was like, if I have to negotiate everything by just dumping my crap out on the table, and at most, if you don't know how to do that eloquently, you get a lot of, like kids do, you're learning, right? Or emotionally challenged. Like if I am not prepared for that, there's a lot of adverse reaction, and that's of no fault to the people around me. That is of no fault to the people around me. They just don't have those tools to deal with it either. It took me 40 years to freaking deal with mine. Yeah. I'm not going to expect anybody to get it done in like a minute. So I learned to retract. I learned if I don't react with the emotions and I'm just, like Spock off of Star Trek or something, I'm just all logic. I can navigate this with all logic. I don't need emotion. I thought if I could do that, then it would be okay. And I mean, I survived, I survived. I existed on a plane pumped full of booze and caffeine for a long time, but
yeah, the great masker.
Yep. Okay. Chat break. Air Force Kitty says, hi, Patrick. I'll tell you who that is if you don't know. Patrick And Michelle says, oh, to the question of if Guy came home drunk, she said, I would take him to a meeting right away, reach out to his sponsor, and lots of prayers. Dan Cade says, so proud of you, Judy.
Oh, thanks, Dan.
Dan, our plans for tomorrow might change abruptly. I'm sitting here catching the cold. I was around 50 people up in Omaha, man. Oh. It's bound to happen. Anyway, we may have to reschedule. Okay, Patrick, I think we're going to start to wrap it up. We got a lot of good discussion. Thank you, everyone, for bearing with the technical stuff. We're good. That's sort of the fun of going live. You get to witness all the stuff that falls apart. But look at that beautiful case back there. I built that bad boy after dinner the other night. It's lovely. Anyway,
during Jeopardy.
Yeah, so I installed a new hard drive, and with that comes a lot of pain and suffering. Okay, next Saturday, be sure to tune in for our special guest. So here's going to be the format. This is awesome. We're going to have Kelly on.
Yes, Kelly. I'm so excited.
She's got tales to tell. So it's going to be Kelly here, Patrick on the Patrick cam, and then Judy on the Judy cam. She'll be out in the Zen room monitoring. So we're going to have 5 people on the stream. That's going to be amazing. Then the weekend after that, we're going to have the illustrious, the one and only, Kellen Francis on.
Good old Padre.
Judy's dad. He wants to talk about some stuff, and I think it's going to be pretty fascinating. And then I'm not going to give...
He's got some stories.
Oh, he does. And then the 2 weekends after that, I'm not going to give away the guests, because then it's spoiler and people won't know. But let's just say that soon Emily is going to be back on.
Very excited about that one.
Yes.
She's got great questions.
Yes.
She's a fantastic questioner.
That little creative mind of hers is
yes.
something else. Okay, thank you, everybody. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for liking this stuff. I can't believe how many subscribers we're getting. It's just, it's not about the subscriptions. What it's about is us building this community and getting a very niche format out there for people that want to talk about addiction and
sobriety, mental
health.
issues. Yeah.
When I started to build all this out with Judy and Patrick, I was looking around. There's mental health stuff, but it's all super scripted and it's all, reading off of doctor charts and stuff. There's no raw, candid format that I can find that's like this.
There is some, but it's a lot of it is spiritual based, which I'm not saying is not a good thing. I think people should have spirituality. It's just that it's so focused around the spirituality that it doesn't really get into the nitty gritty of addiction and mental issues.
Yep. That's what we do on Sober Mind. We get to the raw, nitty gritty nuggets. Okay, let's go ahead and wrap it up. Patrick, thank you so much. We'll see you next weekend.
Thank you.
And immediately after this, I'll be editing the audio and uploading the podcast. And just in case anyone's curious, if they see it on the YouTube stream, what I do is I take the live version and then I edit it down to a shorter format and post it back up in the videos. I think Emily watched one of those the other day. She's like, oh, let me relive John's child abuse adventure. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. Be kind to yourself.
Be kind to yourself. You're loved. Everyone's very special out there.
Reach out if you need it.
Yes, reach out, talk to a friend, talk to professionals out there. Patrick, thank you so much for the inspiring conversation, and I look forward to having some more discussions. Mm-hmm. We'll see you guys next weekend.